Howdy gang. In today's episode of Pool School, I am going to show you how I treat visible black algae. So, what do you say we get to it? Alrighty, before we head outside and to a pool, a couple things to keep in mind. Number one, I actually don't have any pools that have visible black algae, and most of that is because of the way I maintain the pool. Remember this, if your pool is being maintained correctly, that means your chemistry is correct, your chlorine, your pH, your alkalinity are all in the ideal range, and your phosphate levels are low, okay? And that's key. Your filter runs the amount of time it should, and your filter is clean and doing its job efficiently, you shouldn't really have a problem with black algae or algae at all for that matter. If you have not seen my video yet on algae and algicides and why you don't need them, please refer to the description below and I'll have a link to that video so you can see what I'm talking about when it comes to algae. But again, a properly maintained pool, again that's brushing it and taking care of it weekly, shouldn't really have visible algae showing up. It's very rare that I have it happen in any of my pools. And like I said, with black algae, I haven't had that in any of my pools for at least 3 years since I learned about how to prevent black or algae, period, using phosphate remover and making sure everything else is functioning the way it should and chemistry is where it is. So remember that going into this, all right? So what's gonna have to happen is I don't have any pools, like I said earlier, that have visible black algae. So I'm just gonna have to show you on one of my decent pools, one of my other pools that is clean, and just show you how I would do it because I have done it before years ago because like I said, I don't really have to do it anymore. So we'll go into that. Okay, remember what I said just a minute ago about making sure that your chemistry is all good and your chlorine, your pH, your alkalinity, your cyanuric acid levels, which is basically stabilizer or conditioner, they're all in good shape, all in ideal levels. Your filter is running long enough and your filter is clean and doing its job. And then either you have a cleaning system in your pool or you brush and vacuum your pool yourself. I have videos for all of those. If you have not seen them, check around my channel and you'll find them. I don't have a gazillion videos, but they all are very helpful. One thing to keep in mind, and this is a big warning, if you have any of the following types of pool surfaces, please do not do this procedure. If you have a vinyl liner in your pool, that means you maybe have an above ground pool or a semi-in-ground pool. Any pool with a vinyl liner, do not do this on. Any pool with a any fiberglass pool, do not do this procedure on. And then also any pool that has either really old plaster that when you brush it, it kind of powders off, do not do this procedure on that. Or sometimes people with a plaster pool, in order to give themselves a year or two more before they have to resurface their pool, they will actually drain the pool and use a paint coating. There's an actual pool coating that is really rather mediocre at best. And a lot of times, sometimes people will paint that. I have a client who sold his house and they did that. The pool looked great. Within a year, you could see the paint start to slough off just with basic brushing. So if you have any of those kind of pools, you do not want to do this procedure. Remember, vinyl lined pool, fiberglass pool, old plaster that powders off, or plaster that has been painted, because this will harm any of those surfaces. By the way, if you have a plaster pool or you have a plaster pool that's been painted, I'd really suggest first and foremost, get that resurfaced, replastered or PebbleTech or something like that, because that surface is so pithy and has so many attachment points, it's very easy for things like algae to attach themselves to the walls and the bottom of your pool. So again, this procedure is not for any of those types of pools. Now, let's get outside and let's go over the things that you're going to need to treat visible black algae. By the way, don't forget to like and subscribe to this channel and share this channel with your friends who are maybe looking to save a few bucks by servicing their pool themselves. Alrighty, so let's talk about the things you're going to need to treat visible black algae in your pool. First, you're going to need your pole and you're going to need a combo brush, okay? Now, I've done a thing about brushes. This combo brush is part metal bristles and part nylon bristles. And again, that allows me to scrub the visible black algae a little bit. We'll talk about that more later. Also, I'm going to have this. This is made by Pool Season. This is basically trichlor granules, or well, I've always heard it's called trisodium chloride, but basically this one is made by Pool Season. It's called Super Algae Destroyer, and I'm going to use this to help me kill off some of that visible black algae. So trichlor granules is the second thing I need, okay? And then I want some phosphate remover, and I use one made by a company called Orenda. It's called PR10000. By far, in my opinion, just my opinion, it's my favorite. I've used several, and this one seems to work the best for me. It's highly concentrated, so even though this gallon jug is expensive, I only use a certain amount of ounces. Like even in a regular play pool, I'm using only like 4 ounces every time I do it. So this goes a long way. So I bring in some phosphate remover. You have one you like, go ahead and use that one. I also have a little measuring cup for it, so it helps me measure the amount of ounces. And then I have this little scoop, and this is made by Super Pro, and that's to scoop this. That's pretty much all I need. So what we can do now is head out to a pool, and we will pretend, because as I said earlier, I don't have any pools that have visible black algae, so we're gonna have to pretend that we have it, and you're just gonna have to trust me that it works. Okay, I'm at one of my clients' pools, and I know you've seen this pool before, you watched some of my videos, and this obviously doesn't have any visible black algae, like none of my pools do, but we're gonna assume that we got a visible black algae spot right down there, okay? Now, 2 more things that I want to let you know. Number 1, normally when I add chemicals to a pool, I like to run the equipment to circulate the water and disperse it around the pool. In the case of treating for black algae, I do not, this is very important, do not want to run the pool equipment. I want the water as still as possible. And obviously, I don't want anybody swimming in it while I'm treating it, okay? So I'm gonna make sure the equipment is not on and not going to run. The other thing I want you to add on, that I wanna add to this, is that I mentioned about the surfaces you shouldn't do this treatment on. If you have any pool that has any kind of painted bottom, like a black bottom pool where you've painted it, or you painted it a certain color, any of those type of pools that have the surface painted, don't use this treatment method, because you'll damage that paint and you'll probably bleach it out, okay? So remember, I'm not gonna run the equipment, and the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my combo brush and I'm gonna brush the visible algae. So we're gonna pretend it's down there. So I know I apologize for the shakiness of this video, but I'm doing this with one hand. So let's say it's down there, and I'm just gonna brush it and just score it. Now the reason I wanna brush the black algae, and some of it might come off, is because black algae has a much thicker or tougher skin on it than other algae like green algae or mustard or yellow algae. And so I wanna scratch that surface, kind of like certain insects with exoskeletons. We usually use diatomaceous earth to scratch the exoskeleton, so that make them susceptible to the chemicals that we're trying to kill them with. Same thing with this black algae, okay? So I'm going to scrub it and score the surface of it, which is what I did, okay? So that's my first step, brush the visible black algae. Alrighty, step number 2, I've already measured out some of my trichlor granules, and I probably won't even use this much. Again, I'm just using enough to cover the visible algae. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna sprinkle it on the surface of the water, and this again is why I don't want the water moving, and I'm gonna let it settle down on that spot. So I don't know if you can see that piece of vegetation right down that little stick. I'm gonna sprinkle it, and we'll pretend that's the black algae. So I'm gonna sprinkle these trichlor granules onto the surface. That's probably enough. And you'll notice it's settling down into the pool. Okay? See how that's settling down in there? And that's gonna cover that, again, supposed black algae. Now you don't have to get piles of it on there, but you wanna cover it pretty well. So I might put a little more in just to cover that. But again, look how little I used. I had a pretty decent amount in there. So I used just enough to cover the visible black algae, okay? And again, equipment is not running. So that's the next step. All right, now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let that trichlor granules sit on that spot for anywhere between 2 to 5 hours. What that's doing is it allows the trichlor to start killing that algae, okay? And again, you can leave it longer, but 2 to 5 hours is plenty. And then we're going to come back and we're going to scrub that off and see how it did. Okay, so again, we're pretending here a little bit, and we're pretending that it's been about 2 hours or 2 to 5 hours, and normally this would have dissolved by then. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my brush and I'm going to brush the algae spot. Okay, and again, you probably won't see all that visible trichlor because in 2 to 5 hours that would have dissolved. But if I don't see any more black algae, job finished, success, yay, hurrah, I've got it. If I do see a little still, then I will repeat this process by adding some more trichlor granules, letting them settle down there, letting them sit for a few hours, and then scrubbing it off. And I've never had to treat it more than once, but it depends on how good your algae, or how tough your algae is, and that really makes a difference, okay? So that's the next step, is to brush it off. Okay, now that I have gotten the black algae killed off, I want to treat my pool for phosphates, and here's the reason. If you haven't seen my video on algae and algicides and why you don't need them, then you need to watch that video. But basically, algae, when it dies, among other things it releases phosphates. So I take 4 ounces of phosphate remover, because that's what the label basically calls for in a pool this size, and I'm going to just distribute the phosphate remover around the pool. All right, now remember, I'm kind of speeding this process up as far as how long the trichlor granules sat on the bottom of that pool and eat away at the algae. Okay, now at this point, I can go ahead and run my system to distribute the phosphate remover around the pool. And that, my friends, is pretty much it. So gang, there you have it. That's pretty much how you treat black algae in your pool. Just a couple things to go over again. Just remember, don't run the pool equipment while you're treating the area, because you don't want the water moving around. You want the water as still as possible. Make sure if you have any of the types of pools I described in the beginning of this video, or any painted pools, surface pools, don't use this treatment process or you'll damage that type of surface, okay? And remember your steps. Number 1, you're going to brush down the black algae to break the skin. Number 2, you're going to sprinkle trichlor granules on the surface above it, let it settle onto it. Number 3, let it sit there for 2 to 5 hours. Number 4, brush it down really good. Chances are your algae will be gone. If not, just repeat that process with the trichlor granules, a couple more hours, brush it down again. And then remember that second to last step, add your phosphate remover, so you remove any phosphates that either help cause the black algae or that were released when that black algae died, and then run your system or run your equipment at that point and let it disperse all the chemicals and the phosphate remover. So that's pretty much it. Again, I hope this all makes sense. If you have any comments, feel free to put them in the comments section below this video. Or as always, you can email me directly, and my email address is going to come across the screen here. It's kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Again, kennypoolschool@gmail.com. Please again remember to like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already, and share it with your friends who are looking to save a few bucks servicing their own pool themselves as well. And as always, remember, until next time, have fun, be safe, and always, always, always watch those kids around water, and I'll see you next time.